today's digital first world, cyber threats are evolving at an unprecedented pace. From sophisticated phishing attacks to large scale ransomware incidents, organizations are facing an increasing number of security breaches. Now, the traditional methods of cybersecurity, while are effective to some extent, are struggling to keep up with the sheer volume and complexity of these modern cyber threats. And that's where artificial intelligence steps in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Analytics Insight, where we dive deep into the most transformative technologies shaping our world. And I'm your host, Priya Dialani. Now, AI is transforming cybersecurity, offering organizations advanced capabilities to detect, analyze, and mitigate cyber threats in real time. But how exactly does AI enhance cybersecurity? What challenges does it address? And what does the future of AI driven security look like? So let's dive in and let's welcome Robert Pizzari, Vice President, Strategic Advisory, Asia Pacific Splunk. Hi, Robert. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for that warm introduction, Priya, and looking forward to our conversation today.
Definitely. I'm very eager to dive into an interesting conversation with you, Robert. And it's a pleasure to have you with us. A pleasure to have you on a podcast today. So, of course, we're going to talk more about the role of AI in cybersecurity. But before we dive deeper into that particular aspect, I would like to know more about Splunk. So, could you help us understand what exactly the company is into? I very much like the name. It sounds very quirky, but I'm sure it definitely plays a very important role in the field of cybersecurity. So, can you help us understand more about Splunk, its specialization, particular solutions?
Yeah, look, Splunk was derived from the pastime or hobby called spelunking. So for anyone who's ever been cave diving, it requires you to, dive deep underwater in very dark places. And often as you're going through that practice, you're finding things like it's a bit of a discovery of unknowns. And so our founders coined the phrase Splunk, which is why we're called Splunk. Now, who are we and what do we do? So our mission at Splunk is to work with organizations and to help them achieve digital resilience. And the way that we do this is through a combination market-leading solutions, starting with unified security and then pivoting across to observability. And really what this is about is having access to operational data, telemetry coming out of IT systems, networks, clouds, multi-clouds, etc., and then being able to harness the power of analytics to then provide insights and to then empower organizations, whether it's IT operations, engineering, or cyber practitioners, to then make decisions. And, I'd just add to that, it's not only great that we represent Splunk in the industry that we've been in, but I think externally we've had some great industry recognition through the likes of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, where Splunk has been notably selected for many years. In the case of security, for the past 10 years, we've been a leader in the SIEM quadrant, which is the security incident and event management segmentation. And then also, impressively enough, in the domain of observability. And really, the ultimate goal is to help organizations, both detect, investigate, and then decide on response actions to help them restore systems, applications, and services to those that are relying on those particular facilities.
Great. That was pretty interesting, Robert. Thank you for sharing a detailed insight about Splunk, and I'm sure our listeners would be happy to know about Splunk and probably how their solutions will be beneficial for the respective organizations and businesses. Moving ahead, I think when it comes to you, Robert, you are a business and technology leader, and you have worked across several leading technology companies over your 26 years of career. And you have a passion for cybersecurity, and you've also dedicated yourself to helping businesses deal with the complexities arising from nation state and financially motivated threats and adversaries as well. So we would like to know more about you, Robert. While I gave this a brief intro about you, we would like to know how has your journey been till date? What exactly is your role at Splunk, and what triggered your interest at Splunk?
Look, thanks, Priya. The responsibility I have at Splunk is working with our customers, partners, both in the private and public sector. And as the head of the strategic advisory organization, I have practitioners that specialize in cyber operations, which again is a near and dear passion of mine. The next pillar is focused on observability. And nowadays, those two lines are becoming increasingly codependent on one another, because in general, it's really about having a data governance and management strategy to help organizations with their path to resilience. The other key functions that give me great pride is I've hired executives that have worked in end user organizations. So I have on staff some former chief information security officers, as well as chief technology officers, who have worked across a range of sectors from government, as well as in the private sector, from banking, retail, etc. And through having that kind of capability and capacity in the organization, we're then able to take an experience to customers, which is really about getting to the core of what organizations are heading towards. Now, what we're seeing more generally, more broadly, is that governments have been, in the last 5 to 10 years, starting to really tighten the reins around cyber regulations, cyber legislation, and even in the domain of data privacy, right? So there's a lot to sort of digest on where are the priorities, how do I think about my organizational capability, how do I, build that human resource capacity to support the needs of the business and reduce risk ultimately, right? As well as then minimize the potential impact of incidents and outages, whether they're related to IT or, cybersecurity specifically. Probably one other thing that I'll leave you with, Priya, is that as far as the India market is concerned, we've been really focused in working with our customers and partner organizations in India. Splunk took a decision a few years back to establish a product development center in Hyderabad to also then fuel innovation and development of advanced technologies, including those in the domain of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and then more broadly across our portfolio. But interestingly enough, I don't know if you know this, I hope you do, but if you don't, Cisco Systems actually acquired us. We're about on our anniversary date when the deal went live. And so after 12 months of being part of Cisco and bringing the two organizations together, I think there is a real difference that we can make in what we call better together, right? So from an India perspective, totally committed to the market, working with customers, partners in the ecosystem to ensure that they are wildly successful and can help on their digital resilience journey.
Well, yes, and I really hope that your focus on talking to partners in India and helping them build a digital resilience works out good for it becomes like more of a win-win situation for companies in India and as well as for you as to what you're trying to change in the field of cybersecurity. So I think when we're talking about AI, I think it's reshaping every industry, and cybersecurity is no exception. So, a recent research report estimated that the global market for AI-based cybersecurity products was about $15 billion in 2021, and this will surge to roughly $135 billion by 2030. And that's like a huge numbers that we are looking at. So, like a very straightforward question to you, Robert, how do you think or believe that AI will be a game changer in the field of cybersecurity?
Look, great question. I'm going to cite a reference from the Reserve Bank of India. And interestingly enough, in a report that was tabled in the year of calendar year 2024, there were an estimated 14,000 banking-related scams that were reported in the first half. And so what we're starting to see in general is, there was a lot of buzz starting about 2 years ago, particularly around the launch of generative AI. However, for the record, I'd just like to, point out that the domain of deep science, deep learning, and machine learning has been around for decades. At Splunk, the way that we see this market unfolding over time is, the need for us to really lean in and focus on how do we help organizations with their productivity around human resources? Because the cost to continually scale security operations centers and engineering and IT teams, there's no such thing as an infinite budget. But then linked to that, how do we improve the rate of resolution, detection, and even quicker response times. And I think the final piece that I'll share with you is that, we believe that there's always going to be a combination of where we can leverage technology, but there always has to be a human in the loop, right? I think the path that the world is going on, and the trajectory with all the excitement, whether it's agentic AI, whether it's models that are now leaning into that reasoning capability, without doubt, the way that we view it and we promote it with our clients and our partners is that AI powered solutions are really an augmentation to ensure a high level of productivity and efficiency within the workforce. And then lastly, to help with large data volumes and data sets, help teams actually focus on what's really critical versus all the noise, right? And that's something that organizations are really taking advantage of. And, we're really proud of what we've been able to build and continue to enhance. I think the other part to this, Priya, is that, AI and moving into more of a proactive defense posture is definitely something that is continuing to emerge. We've got numerous organizations that have been leveraging machine learning from Splunk, as well as our new AI assistants in both security and observability, where we're seeing an amazing level of results. But again, right, I sort of caution in the organization, AI is not the magic button, but it's a button that will actually sit alongside practitioners and experts as you're actually assessing the risk and the threats that you may be encountering as an organization. And then largely, I think the predictions report of 2025 that we published, one of the key findings out of this was that AI initiatives will be improving productivity, and that'll be the biggest dividend that we'll see organizations be able to leverage and capitalize. And then, freeing up some of that human resource capacity to focus on more interesting things, right? Other than very long queues of false positives that we've seen historically. The final piece is really tied to, how do we then lean on that world of automation and response? And again, this is not a new area, but I think AI then enhances the ability of practitioners as they're going through the process of triage or an investigation. If someone gets stuck midway through, I can ask the assistant a question, and hopefully I'll get a guided response as to what I can then narrow down as that next step. And in many cases, if there are repeatable artifacts that are hitting an environment, then we can also activate that level of automation with a degree of care, because there's been a human in the loop who's been able to then, ensure the efficacy and validation that these automated actions will not cause some other inadvertent chaos or incident within the IT systems of that organization. And then lastly, the world of AI assistants, there's lots of pilots, there's lots of assistants, and we're hearing lots of buzz across the industry. Look, we've launched a couple of assistants, and we've seen great feedback from those that have taken advantage of these capabilities. For example, the Splunk assistant for the Splunk query language called SPL. That's our native language where data sets can be queried to ask, to basically allow practitioners to ask questions. In the good old days, you had to kind of go through a certification process and program to be able to become really proficient and efficient at that. And that created a bit of a barrier for entry, whether it was early in career people or people that weren't Splunk experts. So they would have to go to another team and ask those queries and questions. But by deploying natural language models within our enterprise offering, we've been able to unlock the power of, asking a question in your native tongue and then being able to generate that query. And then the reverse applies. So perhaps there's, dozens of queries or correlations that have been written and built historically, and you've got someone new in the team or someone who's not familiar with the Splunk query language. You can then reverse engineer those queries to actually ask the question, what exactly is this query trying to extract from a particular data set? And then, then prompt the assistant to then build on that if the investigation needs to take a different path. So these types of productivity tools and assistants that are sitting within inside of our technology platforms and the underlying observability and security capabilities that we take to market are really unlocking that time to productivity, but then more importantly, ensuring that the great value of analytics and being able to process things in real time is supporting the ultimate goal, which is to reduce risk for organizations.
Right, I think that was so insightful, Robert, and definitely learned a different perception about how AI is going to be more like a game changer in the field of cybersecurity. And of course, moving ahead, in the future, I think we really have to think about leveraging technology, but also keeping humans in the loop, and but also ensuring that all the monotonous, repetitive tasks are taken over by the machine so that he can focus more on the interesting aspects of their job. So I think if you're talking about today's digital age, the rapid expansion of technology has led to an equally a swift evolution in the cybersecurity threats as well. Now, with cyber attacks becoming increasingly sophisticated, the traditional security measures are often not enough to keep up. So when AI comes into the picture, I think it becomes a powerful tool in terms of threat detection as well as prevention. Now, by leveraging AI, I think organizations can proactively defend against threats. They can predict vulnerabilities and even respond to some of the threats and incidents in real time. So, with all of this, I think while they're leveraging AI, businesses can stay ahead of the curve and take a proactive strategy and wherein they're protecting their assets and reputation as well eventually. So, can you explain how AI helps in, detecting and responding to threats, which is, faster than the traditional methods? And can you probably share us like some real world examples as to how AI has helped in preventing a cybersecurity attack?
Yeah, look, the experience in the field, and look, part of this is we're still in the early days, right? So I think, as I mentioned earlier, since 2015, we unlocked the power of machine learning for our customers, and through being inquisitive, there were a lot of use cases that were sort of built on the fly with Splunk, right? So being an underlying data platform, we're then able to add the model capability, looking at data sets, and then anomalous type behavior. So we've been doing this for a very long time. I think the real driver that we've seen in more recent years is to make it easy and accessible so that people can effectively take advantage of these capabilities in an out of the box fashion. Not all organizations can afford or can attract data scientists and people that really have that deep understanding of the inner workings and mathematics within the models. So there are really four areas that I'll call out in terms of capabilities that we have in place today, as well as areas that will continue to evolve over the coming years. But the pace of innovation is accelerating at a very, very fast pace. So the first area is tied to real-time anomaly detection. And this is where we really take advantage of AI-driven analytics to monitor data in real time, to help the operators identify anomalies that may indicate a security threat, that may indicate some other activity within the IT architecture and ecosystem. But really then by honing in and leveraging things like AI ops and other capabilities and tooling, we can then accelerate that investigation and response, right? So basically anomaly-driven detection through the use of AI. The second area is just the volume, critical vulnerabilities that are being published, almost on a daily basis. If you look at the CVE database, which is a repository that vendors will publish and upload known vulnerabilities, things that have been known to have been exploited out there, right? The reality is it's just overwhelming, right? And teams are struggling to keep up. So for example, if within my IT environment, I've got hundreds of systems, various operating systems, various networking devices, cloud workloads, on-premise workloads. Just keeping up with threat analysis is basically impossible. And so our pivot into what we call automated threat analysis, again, it's really about once you've got access to the data, the assets, the telemetry, the operational data that's coming out of systems, then we can actually help automate that whole process. And again, if you think about finding that needle in the haystack, it's not that easy. But if you're smart about it, leveraging analytics, machine learning, and other capabilities is really starting to be a game changer in helping organizations detect those seemingly benign, maybe it's expected behavior, but it's occurring at the wrong time of day. Or perhaps there's a request that's being initiated from a geography or location that just doesn't make sense, right? And trying to find that in the vast terabytes that organizations are experiencing on a daily basis, this is really quite profound, right? To really zero in on what's important, go to the investigation. If it's a true, determined to be a real issue, then you may protect your organization from a major cyber attack, or it could be some sort of misconfigured device or identity and protective level of mechanism that then needs to be, further refined or tuned. The third area is what we call predictive insights. And this is effectively using things like pattern recognition, trends within a baseline of behavior that then allows for things outside the expected norm and behavior to then be picked up quite rapidly, and then to enable the practitioners to proactively activate an action that helps with these vulnerabilities that were exploited. So, for example, Robert starts work. Actually, I wake up very early, I have to confess. Every day at 6 a.m., I log into my machine and I access certain applications. It could be a web browser, it could be a database to do my job. But then suddenly, Robert, as a user who's authorized to use these applications, starts logging in at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., which is outside of that usual and normal baseline behavior. Now, perhaps Robert has traveled to the US, but actually the systems don't know that. Now, in the case that Robert has not traveled to the US, and someone has Robert's credentials and he's accessing these systems, that should be an event that gets brought to the security operations team's notice and attention to take an enforcement action to perhaps quarantine my machine or my credentials to then determine, is Robert actually the user, right? So that's a real-world experience, really hard to deal with in real time. The last part, which is about the response piece. And again, like just with the vast volumes of false positives, lots of noisy devices, poorly tuned, technology controls, without an AI-powered automated mechanism, it's really difficult for teams to keep up. Teams will start ignoring what we would call the lower fidelity or lower risk items to focus on those that are of critical designation. But in that effort to manage workload and productivity, they may be missing something that's key, that's lower down in the stack, right? So this streamlined incident response, again, leveraging an AI-powered automation capability, can really help teams sort of iron out what's important and what has to be dealt with. And for those lower type of artifacts, have a process and a mechanism that can actually elevate them when they need to be.
Right. I think that's so much insightful, and thank you for helping us understand the role of AI in terms of detecting threats in a detailed and a prospective manner. But on the flip side, I think, Robert, I mean, of course, we are seeing advancements in cybersecurity and thanks to AI. But on the other hand, I think even cyber criminals are relentless and also resourceful. Now, while AI has given organizations a powerful tool to fight cyber threats, it has also been adopted by cyber criminals themselves also. So now I think AI-powered cyber attacks have now been becoming and increasingly becoming a growing concern, because even they can use AI to automate their phishing attacks. We have been seeing a lot of deepfake scams lately. So and that can eventually kind of evade the traditional security measures. So how can we address these concerns about the potential of AI being used by cyber criminals for the cyber attacks?
We are, without doubt, living in unprecedented times where you're absolutely spot on, right? I think there's the red team and there's the blue team. So in the cyber world, the red team are the attackers, the blue team are the defenders. And this AI arms race, like who has the most advanced access to models, who can take advantage through innovation, whether it's on the red side or the blue side, right? So this is definitely something that is alive and well. In fact, some research published recently highlighted that in the dark web itself, there are AI as a service tools that are designed and made available on a subscription basis for a fee per month, where threat actor groups are able to then effectively leverage these assistants and large language models that have been trained for the purpose of building new tools, techniques, and procedures to take advantage of vulnerabilities, right? So this is real and it's happening. Late last year at one of our user conferences, an international airline, I won't mention the name, stood up on stage, and as the CISO was sort of expressing what's on their mind, they said, hey, we've got evidence that on a daily basis, the level of use in terms of whether it's social engineering related attacks, whether it was very targeted, well-crafted phishing lures to, have people take the bait and click on a promotion as an example, was something that their team were now trying to counter just because of the sheer volume and level of authenticity. The team on the blue side or the defender side really needed to lean in. So, in a recently published report that targeted CISOs across the world, more than half of those CISOs that are out there are realizing that AI is potentially giving the attackers an advantage. And, there's a real push to ensure that those teams have got a great level of education. They're also being given access to tooling that will help them identify potential attacks, right? So I think absolutely on the threat landscape side, I think we're all fully aware that our adversaries, if they're one step ahead of us, we're going to run into problem. I think the second area that we're starting to see is what we would call the defensive use of AI. So how do I, as the blue team, start thinking about my security operations environment, the way that I'm building my data pipelines, how I'm dealing with, threats as they're emerging, and really to then take advantage of AI to help me reduce the attack surface within my environment. This is something that is really, really important and a key fixture. And we're definitely going to see the industry, embark on this journey, and there will be a lot more being communicated over time. Without doubt, the CISOs have to lean in, provide, training to teams, tooling to teams, and really understand the vulnerabilities that AI will potentially be used against them as their own organizations start adopting AI, right? And I think there's been another interesting emergence. So in the IT world, we had this expression called shadow IT, and these were systems that were active, alive on networks, things that had been stood up that had bypassed the processes and procedures to really harden systems and ensure that systems were, ready for production. We're seeing the same thing in AI, right? So this need to then have the ability to monitor AI that's being used inside of an organization, AI that might be sanctioned and authorized versus people, leveraging third-party tooling, open source tools that are not authorized, right? And again, that risk that some of these AI applications will potentially introduce into organizations is something that's really critical to have a level of visibility, but to also have policies and protocols in place to ensure that you're not inadvertently creating a cyber event or a data privacy breach, etc. And then lastly, the other thing is, we as a community, whether it's on the government side, whether an organization is being regulated, it's really critical that we learn from each other and that we share best practice. But the other aspect to this is that, through this collaboration, I think the other area that we're starting to see in many markets, including India, Singapore, and Australia, and others, is really about promoting the ethical use of AI as well as ethical innovation. And I think it's important that we take a stand in that regard and ensure that we're not falling behind the adversaries and the attackers, and that we're actually equally educated, both from a general governance point of view, the policies and standards that we set, and then have a technology response and answer to being able to monitor these AI workloads, irrespective of where they are and how they operate.
Right, I think you've highlighted some really crucial points, Robert, and it definitely gives us the picture that the that how the nature of AI and cybersecurity is kind of double-edged. And while AI is being leveraged to enhance the security measures, even cyber criminals are evolving their tactics. Eventually, I think it comes down to how organization can adapt to the changing trends and are kind of staying ahead the cyber criminals. And again, it's really important that we ethically make use of AI and promote more ethical AI innovation, because I think that is definitely the need of our considering the controversies that we are hearing lately as to how AI systems can violate privacy rights, or they can also become biased in a decision making process. But I think eventually you know a lot of a lot has changed with the uh, role of AI in the cybersecurity, because I think it is going to play a very important role in protecting the entire digital infrastructure, and ensuring and maintaining that trust within the ecosystem, whether it's your customers or your partners. I think that's really important. So, having said that, one last question for you, Robert. How do you think is the future of AI in cybersecurity? Or what do you think are certain trends that might shape the future of cybersecurity, considering AI in the picture?
At the center of this universe, it's all about data and the organizational responsibility to protect the data of their customers, their employees, and the wider supply chain. Um, just like we've built practices over many decades, and there are frameworks for cybersecurity and data privacy to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of this highly valued information assets. The same really applies for AI, not just in cybersecurity, but more generally and broadly across how this will be deployed for organizations to take advantage, whether it's to enhance the customer experience, to improve their digital resilience, etc. So I really look at this through three lenses. The first is we cannot ignore our broader security strategy and the program that's been running for many years, but AI becomes an add-on, and through that add-on process, it's really about ensuring that the entire life cycle of AI is incorporated. So whether it's the data that's being trained for the models, whether it's the model selection themselves, to ensure that that entire ecosystem and pipeline has a degree of integrity and is secure. The final part to this as well is there are different types of AI. So anything that's effectively hosted in the public world means that any data uploaded into these models is in the model forever, right? Versus those that are tightly controlled by an organization itself. So thinking through this, that holistic security strategy will then have this secondary pillar that is to act as an enabler to ensure that there are safe practices, that things are done with security in mind, with compliance in mind, and then, of course, to reduce, the risk of data privacy breaches. The second area that we like to sort of, work with our clients on is tied to what we call the unified approach. We know AI is here to stay. The rapid pace of innovation is not going away anytime soon. And so rather than security being a disabler to, leveraging innovation and accelerated benefits from AI, we need to find that balance on how we can enable organizations, both from an observability and security perspective, you know, look at their environments, their assets, their data, and actually use the data to drive decision making that will enhance operational efficiency and then ultimately reduce risk and potential disruption for respective organizations. And then lastly, without doubt, I think any AI assistant, irrespective of whether it's an open source assistant, whether it's integrated into enterprise software, which is what Splunk is doing with our technology stack, it's to really help organizations reduce the risk and then to accelerate the time to value for their organizations and to achieve their ultimate mission of ensuring that the organization is secure, the workforce is optimized in the fashion that it's efficient. And then lastly, to help alleviate some of the tech talent shortage that we've seen historically. One thing that I don't know if you're going to ask me, but I'll sort of tackle this head on, is there's debates raging across the world. Will AI replace jobs, remove jobs, etc.? There could be a degree of assistance enabling people to be more productive, but within this whole AI domain, we're definitely seeing that new jobs will be created, right? And over the coming decade, there's going to be an exciting range of new opportunity for early in career people, mid career people, and even later stage, where having a knowledge and a passion for how AI can be utilized, leveraged to drive business outcomes, operational efficiency outcomes, and then more importantly, better cybersecurity resilience for companies and businesses. We're really our emphasis, and I've got a meeting with the Department of Education here in Singapore later this afternoon. It's really around how do we actually build that ecosystem that provides opportunity for folks that are curious. They may not have a strong technology foundational degree in computer science, but the world that we're living in right now means that AI is really accessible to anyone who's curious enough to embark on that journey. So super, super excited to be part of this paradigm shift that we're going through.
Right. I think we are definitely moving towards a very exciting future, and we are yet to see more advancements in the field of AI, and of course how that complements the cybersecurity. So I think in the overall discussion, I think AI has revolutionized cybersecurity, making it more faster, smarter, and even efficient. And while cyber criminals are also using AI to develop more sophisticated attacks, I think it's important for businesses to stay proactive, continuously innovate, and of course invest in AI-driven security solutions to stay ahead. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for your insights, and thank you for making us understand that the future of cybersecurity is not about just a technology; it's more about a holistic, strategic approach that combines AI, human expertise as well, and develop an altogether a strong security culture. And I think organizations that can strike this balance are the ones that can thrive in a digital age in the coming years. So thank you so much, Robert, for your time and effort. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, look, same, Priya. Thanks for the opportunity to connect with your listeners and your audience, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. So, this is for our listeners. I hope you enjoyed our today's conversation, and stay tuned for upcoming podcasts. You can view and listen all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you.